House of Representatives for our 166th district, which includes most of Haverford Township and parts of Marple, soon to become Lower Merion, and Radnor. So welcome everyone. The forum will be run in accordance with the Nonpartisan League of Women Voters format. We will begin with 5-minute opening statements by each candidate, followed by questions submitted by you in the audience. You will see someone going up and down the aisles with cards and pencils for you to submit your questions. Please make sure your questions are appropriate to state concerns, not national issues such as U.S. taxes, Social Security. They don't control that. You may direct your questions to both candidates or to one specifically. The other candidate will have the same amount of time to respond to every question. We also invited 2 candidates from the 163rd district, but Jamie Santora declined to attend. In the interest of nonpartisanship, we can't have a debate with just one candidate. His opponent, Vince Rangione, is here attending this forum and is available to meet with you after the forum. Vincent, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Good evening, everyone. As Kate mentioned, I'm Vince Rangione. I'm the Democratic candidate for State House in the 163rd Legislative District. For those who don't know, that's Haverford, Warrens 1 and 9, Drexel Hill, Clifton Heights, and Alden. I grew up right here in Havertown on Darby Road. I attended Manoa Elementary School. I know we're at Linwood tonight, but you'll forgive me for a Go Mustangs. Also, Haverford High School, as I said, grew up right on Darby Road. My father attended Monsignor Bonner and grew up in Upper Darby. And both my parents were educators, so it's appropriate to me that we're in an elementary school tonight. Education is the most powerful force we have to level the playing field. You all know that our governor has cut $1 billion from education. It's a huge reason that I'm running. We need to fully fund our public schools. So I'm very thankful to the League of Women Voters and to Kate for giving me the opportunity to introduce myself tonight. Again, Vince Rangione, born and raised in Havertown, running for the 163rd Legislative District. I appreciate your consideration on Election Day, and I will be here to answer any of your questions afterwards. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. We will present as many questions from the audience as we can, and then the candidates will have 3 minutes for closing statements at the end. We're trying to end by 8:45 p.m. Our moderators tonight come from our community. I'd like to introduce Chris Whiting, President of the Haverford Township Civic Council, and another Civic Council member, Don Kelly. They will collect the written questions and read them to the candidates. They will not choose a question if it has already been asked, but otherwise will read what you have written. We look at the questions to avoid duplication only. We ask that everyone in the audience be respectful of our moderators and candidates, and that you refrain from applause and verbal comments until after the candidates give their closing statements at the end. That will really save time. Thank you. I'd like to remind everyone here and those watching at home that Election Day is Tuesday, November 4th. Voters do not need a photo ID for this election unless you are a new voter or voting in a new precinct for the first time. This forum will be broadcast on local cable channels in Haverford and Radnor Township. And thank you for making this video, a student from Cabrini, for making the video of this forum. Now we'll begin with the opening statements. We did a coin toss, and Greg Vitali is going first.
Thanks, Kate. Hi, everybody. Familiar faces here. Good to see Jan Rushworth walk in the room. So great to see you. Thanks to the League for doing this. It's a really important function. It's sometimes a thankless task, but we really appreciate it. And I thank the members of the audience for your interest in this. The political system really only works well if there's eyes like people like you on it. And I do thank and Sarah, thank you for the civil campaign you've run to date. I mean, I really run against 12 candidates now, and you've been really remarkable in your civility, so I appreciate that. And I do thank the people in the 166th Legislative District for the trust they've placed in me over the years. I've gotten to know the residents of this district pretty well, and one thing I do know is the most important thing to the people I represent is education. I think with the new configuration, I think the 166th district is in the amazing situation of having 3 of the top 10 school districts in the state: Radnor, Lower Merion, and scrappy Haverford Township with a little less resources than Radnor and Lower Merion, hanging in there at the 8th best school district in the state. Quite amazing. Brick and mortar public schools are the backbone of this state, of a community, and I truly understand that. And because they help all our property values. I chose to live in Haverford Township because of the quality of the schools. I'm sure many of you did too. But they're under assault in Harrisburg. There are people who would want to undermine, defund public schools, and I pledge to continue to be an advocate for the cutting of funds and the diversion of funds from public schools and the excessive state mandates that really make it harder for good schools like Radnor and Lower Merion and Haverford Township to do their job. I work closely with school board directors, Larry Feinberg and others, to really help me untangle the complicated pieces of legislation we worked on to make sure I take correct votes for the school districts of this area. Also, it's very important, school districts like Philadelphia and Chester Upland, I also fight to make sure they get their fair share, because this region does not work well if we neglect our most poor students in those school districts. I'm also an advocate for fighting to make sure they get at least a good, adequate education. The environment is very important to me, and next term I will continue as chairman of the Environmental Committee to work hard on environmental policy. How the elections go depend on whether we work on offense or defense. Last 4 years, progressivism has been on defense. We've been trying to prevent bad things. We have managed to prevent the erosion of the Pennsylvania Endangered Species Act. We're able to soften some bad buffer legislation that eventually did get passed, and we also were able to soften some legislation which really politicized the efforts to reduce greenhouse gas in Pennsylvania. Hopefully next year we can go on the offense, because we really need to do things like reduce CO2 in the atmosphere. We do need to make sure Marcellus drilling is done in a safe way in the appropriate places. We do need to do things like reinstate the moratorium on the leasing of state forest land for drilling. We do need to do things like reduce methane emissions from gas drilling, because that's also a very powerful greenhouse gas. We need to get staffing levels up at the Department of Environmental Protection so the laws that are out there are fully enforced. I can take on issues that are opposite those of the powerful drilling interests and others, because I have kept myself independent of special interest group money. I don't take contributions from special interest groups. And I can do this because I take the time to visit every home in the district. I have that one-on-one bond with people, and that allows me to have that independence. I also attempt to regularly communicate with people, and I know my Chief of Staff, Greg Vitali, is here. The district office does a good job solving people's problems. So if re-elected, I will continue to work for the people of this district, and I look forward in the next hour with Sarah to discuss the issues that we'll be facing next term. So thank you again.
Thank you to the League of Women Voters and all the residents who came out this evening. Thank you, Mr. Vitali. This has been an incredible year for me, as I've had the opportunity to talk with wonderful groups from all over the district. In any given week, I've met with groups such as the Delaware County Autism Support Services, business owners associations, law enforcement members, the Progressive Women of Lower Merion, and I've had the opportunity to attend events such as mental health forums, the Brookline Firehouse 100th Anniversary Parade, library meetings, the Radnor Fall Festival, and the Kevin Kane 5K. I've also enjoyed getting getting to know the commissioners and school board directors in all 3 townships. There is literally something going on every night of the week in our district with fantastic, organized, and passionate people who care deeply about their cause. I applaud them, and I look forward to the opportunity to support them in Harrisburg. Now, here is something that you might find very surprising for me to say. 20 years ago, I voted for Greg Vitali. He stopped by my home in Havertown when he was running for his first re-election, and I was holding my new baby girl in my arms. I was 25 years old at the time. He handed me a flyer, and a couple of weeks later, I voted for him. Fast forward 20 years, and that baby in my arms is now a junior at Penn State, and I've had enough life experience now to know that the real hard work required from a legislator is to provide effective representation for our district in Harrisburg. An effective representative casts votes that reflect the values of the district, not personal values. An effective representative builds relationships in Harrisburg so that he or she can secure the support necessary when we need something. An effective representative listens to our local elected officials of both parties. An effective representative does the hard constituent services, like addressing stormwater management issues and economic development for our small business owners who bring life to our towns. As I've knocked on thousands of doors and talked to well over 10,000 residents this past year, I will tell you that there is far more that unites us than divides us. We all want to live in a safe community where our children receive excellent educations. We want there to be job opportunities for us and for our families. We want to live where there is a thriving small business community, so we can walk into town on a Friday night and get a slice of pizza and an ice cream cone. We want young people to be able to move into our neighborhoods, and we want our seniors to be able to age in their own homes. And I am concerned that these common desires are under threat. For example, I've spoken to many of our seniors who are taking out reverse mortgages so that they can pay their property taxes. That devastates me. That particular situation can easily be traced back to our broken school funding formula that was set 25 years ago and disadvantages our students and overburdens our taxpayers. That will be my #1 focus in Harrisburg, working to fix that formula so that our schools get the funding we deserve and our taxpayers get the relief they need. Additionally, there are still billions of dollars of waste in state government. And as an experienced fraud examiner, I believe it's unacceptable to keep going back to our already stretched taxpayers for yet more money and yet allow the waste, fraud, and abuse to continue. It is completely unacceptable. In addition to spending time with the residents of the 166, I've also worked hard to secure the endorsements of organizations that I believe are important to our community. I'm the selected candidate of law enforcement and the business community. Because of my particular interest in working on mental health issues, I've also had the opportunity to meet with leaders of that profession, and I believe there's a lot of good work we can do together to help those in our community who are afflicted. I will say that when I talk with residents at the door about what I'd like to do when it comes to improving mental health resources for our residents, I can see people physically transform in front of my eyes. People are desperate for leadership on something that is so very personal to them. In closing, I'd like to make something very clear. I have not for 1 minute throughout this entire campaign thought in terms of running against Greg Vitali. I'm running for something. Yes, it's important to point out where I would have made different choices than Mr. Vitali, but I approach public service this way. It's my job to listen to the residents of Haverford, Lower Merion, and Radnor, and really hear what you have to say. It is also my job to tell you the skills that I've accumulated as a wife, a mother, a volunteer, and a businesswoman of 23 years. And I look forward to an exciting debate this evening. Thank you all for coming.
plans for education in Pennsylvania during the coming legislative session?
Maybe we'll go first.
I'm sorry, Greg.
As I said, brick and mortar schools are the backbone of this community. The hope is that we can restore the billion-dollar funding cuts that have occurred over the past 4 years. But we can get into a debate about those cuts, but I think the reality is that right now only 34% of funding for basic education comes from the state. It should be around 50%. So one thing we need to do, hopefully we will get a governor and a legislature that understands that and devotes more money to basic ed. I think Sarah mentioned in her opening remarks property taxes. Well, I think it's a function of property taxes increase when you don't get the proper funds from the state to fund your schools. That has to be made up in property taxes. So by properly funding education, you take the stress off property taxes. Also, letting local school districts have the autonomy to do their jobs. I mean, one thing commonly cited by me were the Keystone exams and making that a graduation requirement for those graduating the year 2017. That's something that I think we have to work on eliminating. So eliminating the mandates, properly funding schools, giving local school districts the autonomy to do what we elect our school boards to do.
As I mentioned in my opening, the number one priority that I have in Harrisburg, not just for education, but for priorities in general, is to fix the funding formula. 25 years ago, the funding formula was put in place, and there's a clause in the funding formula called do no harm. And the problem with that for our particular district is the do no harm clause does not allow any schools to get less funding than they did the prior year. It sounds very good on paper, but what has happened over 25 years? Shifting demographics. So the school districts in the central portion of the state that have less students, significantly less students over the last 25 years, and then school districts like ours that have seen an increase in school students. The schools out in the middle portion of the state are still getting the same dollars. So on a per student basis, they're getting a per student basis much more money than our area. We do not get much state funding in the 166 for our 3 school districts, Lower Merion, Radnor, and Haverford. We average about 13–14%, which is not very much money for our state budget. I think I'm almost done. The other 2 things that are important to me is to stop the unfunded mandates. We have excellent schools in the 166 district. We have excellent school board directors in the 166 district that know what they are doing. They don't need more unfunded mandates from Harrisburg. Thank you very much.
We're going to hold the applause until the end just so we can get through this. So the next question, and Sarah, we'll start with you. This is your position on drilling on state lands and for taxing the gas companies, natural gas companies.
This has been a big issue throughout the entire campaign, is the issue of fracking, the issue of taxing, and the thing that I find interesting is probably about 10 years ago, there was much discussion in our area about whether to do any fracking. That conversation is not happening anymore. The conversation is now impact fee versus severance tax. Those who are following this in the news, that's the big story. Generally speaking, I oppose soundbite policy making, and I'm afraid that the dialogue for the past year has been tax the drillers to fully fund our schools. Well, it does fit nicely into a headline. It is easily digestible. But the reality is that the oil companies, the drilling companies are paying a lot of money into our state budget every year. And personally, for our district, the 166th district, the impact fee has provided well over $1 million in the last 2 years. That money has been used to buy fire trucks and other pieces of equipment, which has kept municipal property taxes lower. Otherwise, we'd have to buy those fire trucks.
Okay.
That's great.
No, I disagree pretty strongly here. We really should be having a severance tax of about 5 or 6%. We are simply leaving money on the table by not taxing drillers to that degree. This gas isn't going anywhere, the drillers aren't going anywhere. Right now, according to the Pennsylvania Budget and Policy Center, our impact is an effective tax rate of 1.8%. Other states have drilling fees of up to 7%. According to the Pennsylvania Budget and Policy Center, the current impact fee would yield us $382 million in 2020, yet a 4% severance tax is $1.2 billion. So it's $382 million what we're on track to get now versus $1.2 billion if we enact a 4% severance tax. There's really no reason to do this. This is a very desirable shale formation. We're very close to markets. We're close to Philadelphia, Baltimore, Washington, the whole eastern seaboard. This is valuable stuff. We're leaving money on the table. The drillers are very powerful. They get a lot of money in campaign contributions. And we simply need this revenue, and we should have this revenue, and there's no reason for us not to have it.
Thank you, Greg. Greg, this is for you, the next question. Do you favor any changes to the state liquor distribution system?
Yeah, just to get a running start on that question. I mean, if we were constructing this system from the start, I would support complete privatization. Because I mean, as a general rule, it should be in the private hands. But that's not where we are. We do have a system, we have a functioning system that's giving us revenue, it's creating good jobs, it's providing control from the excessive use of liquor and liquor requirements and so forth. So the current system is what we're dealing with. I think we have to make it more consumer friendly. We have to do things like making sure the hours are better, the selections are better, the ability to get wine, the internet is better. I think what we have to deal with where we are now, and we have to make it more consumer friendly. We have to make our stores better and a more desirable place for consumers to shop.
Sarah?
I'd like to just mention I have not gotten any money from the drillers, so. Liquor privatization. I am for liquor privatization. I think that there are about 4 fundamental things that state government should do and should do well. Number 1, education. Number 2, transportation. That's taking care of our roads and bridges and filling our potholes. Number 3, medication, which is Medicare, and taking care of the health of our community. And lastly, the judicial system in our state and law enforcement. Those are the things we should do well. I am not sure why we got involved in selling liquor and wine, and I think that if you look at the studies in Pennsylvania, it's about 70% of Pennsylvanians would like to see liquor privatized. I would like to see liquor privatized. I would also like to make sure in the transition that those people who currently work for the state and the state liquor stores have the first opportunity for jobs when it does become privatized. I'm sure it will be something that has to happen over the course of time, but I would certainly support privatization of liquor.
Thank you. Sarah, this is a question for you to start with. How will you work with the Board of Commissioners of Radnor and Haverford Township?
Oh, that's a great question. I really have enjoyed getting to know the Haverford Township Commissioner as well. I've attended many meetings and have enjoyed getting to know them personally and professionally. I have been attending Radnor Township meetings for about 14 years. I was the chairperson of the Radnor Township Citizens Budget and Finance Advisory Committee. That was a newly formed board, advisory board in 2010. It was a bipartisan board. I was elected chair, which was a tremendous honor. And we worked together for a year. We put in about 1,200 hours collectively and produced a unanimous report of recommendations to the Board of Commissioners and to the taxpayers that was very well received. And it was such a fantastic process that we went through that the Board of Commissioners in Radnor decided to make it a standing committee, and they renamed it CARFAC, but that exists today. I really enjoy working with the school board and the boards of commissioners, and I look forward to working with those in Lower Merion as well. We also have a lot of things, as I attend all the different meetings, I see a lot of opportunities for the three townships to work together, and I'm looking forward to it. Thank you.
I'd like to think I have a good working relationship with the commissioners of all three municipalities. Suffolk, Mario, Leeville, a little earlier about a meeting we're going to be having on Friday with regard to a subdivision in the Leonard section. We have a meeting set up in November with regard to stormwater issues. I've met with most of the commissioners in Lower Merion with regard to the cricket lot development that I have a lot of concerns with. Met with Commissioner Higgins late last year with regard to some stormwater problems they're having and right around the business section of downtown Wayne. So I think I do think I have a relationship with most of the commissioners in Haverford Township, not all, but most. I think we work in a real bipartisan way to try to get problems solved. I have a good relationship with Bradner and a growing relationship with Lower Merion. So we just it's about problem solving at this level, not partisan politics.
Thank you. This question relates to balancing the state budget. If elected, Ms. Armstrong, we'll begin with you.
Start with Greg.
Pardon me?
Start with
Greg? I'm sorry, okay. Would you vote to increase state taxes, reduce expenses, or some other alternative in order to balance the state budget?
Certainly, a severance tax is something I would support. I think we'd have to take a good look at what we needed to fund education. I don't have a long history of raising taxes. We've done that very sparingly over the years. But there are areas you can explore, things like closing the Delaware loophole to make our business taxes a little favorable. There's something called the vendor discount, which is somewhat outdated, that might give us a little more revenue. Tax on smokeless tobacco or the cigars. We're the only state that doesn't do that. So I think, the money has to come from somewhere. I mean, I don't see any changes to the big taxes that affect individuals, like the sales tax or the income tax or anything like that. But I think there are ways you can gain more revenues. Maybe stop the scaling back of the capital stock and franchise tax that's needed to fund schools. But I do think you need priorities, and so you do have to take a careful look at things, make sure we can fund education, environmental protection, and other important things in an appropriate way.
Ms. Armstrong?
I'm not opposed to looking at severance tax as well, just to be clear with that. The issue with the drillers right now is the impact fee plus all of the other taxes that they are currently paying puts them well above what they're paying in other states that do have a severance tax. I'd be happy to go over the numbers with anyone later, but I am happy to look at a severance tax. We do still have significant waste, fraud, and abuse in our state budget. Low estimates are in the 10% range. With a $29 billion budget, that's a lot of money, and I have those kind of skills. We may have to look at raising taxes a little bit. I wouldn't say that we wouldn't raise taxes, but we have to take a look at all the numbers and make sure it's something that's not going to hurt people. It's also important to look at not just how much money, but where are we spending money? Are we spending money wisely? Are there things that we shouldn't be doing at all? So I would want to take a look at that. And we have to do pension reform. The reality is an awful lot of our money in the state budget goes to our currently unfunded pension liabilities. We need to address that in a holistic way, address that problem, and start working those solutions into our budget.
Thank you. This question relates to minimum sentencing and another crime-related question that I'll try to combine. So the first question is, how would you characterize your position regarding sentencing enhancements and mandatory minimum sentencing? And then related to that, what is your position on the re-victimization bill, otherwise known as the MOMIA bill, that was recently signed? So
Start with Sarah.
Start with Sarah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Minimum mandatory sentencing came about and passed by the legislature because they were concerned about judges across the state who were giving sentences to people who committed the same crime, essentially, in two different portions of the state, and wound up with very different sentencing based on which judge decided. So minimum mandatory sentences were put in place for certain crimes, and additionally, maximum sentencing guidelines were put in place. And I think both of those are appropriate. I think that the minimum mandatory sentencing is used only in certain crimes. It's not a one-size-fits-all. Every crime goes into minimum mandatory sentencing. I also believe that at times there are bills that we have seen legislators who oppose minimum mandatory sentencing vote in favor of, because those bills protected our children. And that's very important to me as a mother, that regardless of where you are on minimum mandatory sentencing, there's always an opportunity to look at the greater good and protect our children.
Thank you. Vitali.
Yeah, it's been an issue in the past half dozen elections that doesn't appear to be anything which I do not support mandatory minimum sentencing because it takes away the ability of the judge to do justice. I think sentencing guidelines are the way to make sure that people who commit like crimes under like circumstances get the same sentence. Minimum mandatory sentences basically say that no matter what the circumstances are, if you commit a certain crime, if you sell drugs in a school zone, you have to go to jail for 2 years. Well, that could be one Villanova student selling a nickel bag of pot, I don't know if you still use those terms, to another at the Broadlawn Apartments, because you're in a school zone and you sold drugs. But it's clearly two Villanova students with no prior record doing that shouldn't be caught by the mandatory minimum sentencing. That's the injustice of that. So it's a justice issue. You know, groups as notable as the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops oppose mandatory minimum sentencing because it really is an injustice, and so I do not support that. And
Mr. Vitali first. Okay, this is a climate-related issue, or environmental-related issue, and it's got two parts. Do you believe the science of climate change is sound? If so, is there anything more that Pennsylvania can do to reduce greenhouse emissions? Mr. Vitali.
Yeah, the science is overwhelming. The U.S. Academy of Science, the International Governmental Panel on Climate Change, the Academies of Science of many states, legitimate group after group has come out and said climate change is real. The real debate, there really isn't a debate in the scientific community about that. You can debate, the rate which is apparent, so there's no debate about the reality. It's vitally important that we in Pennsylvania address climate change because we produce almost 1% of the world's greenhouse gases with all between the transportation sector and the utility sector with our coal-fired power plants and even natural gas. So it's vitally important that we address climate change as a state. I think it's what current government has said the word climate change in the last 4 years. It's a problem that we can't duck, shouldn't duck. I mean, we need to shift to, we need to conserve energy, we need to shift to renewable forms of energy like wind and solar. I've introduced legislation this term, House Bill 100, which would increase our alternative energy portfolio standard. Another bill that would refund our PA Solar Sunshine Program, and we'll continue to work towards reducing the amount of carbon this state emits because it's the responsible thing to do.
Thank you. Ms. Armstrong.
Well, I'm not a scientist. I have read quite a few articles and informational pieces on climate change, and I'm not yet convinced that the science is sound. There are opposing views, but here is what I do believe. We all have a responsibility to be stewards of our Earth. My children live here, hopefully my grandchildren will live here, so I think it's very important that we all take good care of our Earth. And the thing that I'm most interested in when it comes to the environment is the environment in the 166th district. If you go on the American Lung Association and you type in your zip code here, you will find that we have a grade F air quality in our district. So I may not be an expert on the environment, I am not an expert on climate change, but what I can tell you is that the time I spend on environmental issues will be spent in the 166th district.
Thank you. This is a more personal, motivational issue, and the question is, what motivates you to run for this office?
Well, I'm very lucky to come from a long line of public service. My mother was the first female elected sheriff of Delaware County in the early 90s, and I worked on her campaign, and that was a wonderful experience. I believe she was the 6th female in our country's history at that time. And she has gone on to additional elected office and still continues to serve the residents of Delaware County today. And as I've watched her career, and I've seen all of the good that you can do in public service and really help people, and not the political side, the side that everybody really doesn't like, but the public service side that I really believe in tremendously. My father also served our country in the Marine Corps and the FBI for 32 years. He's the elected township treasurer of Radnor Township, and I worked on his campaign. So I've seen the good that you can do when you care about issues and you care about people, and that's why I decided to run for public office. I believe I bring a particular set of skills to the table, and I'm having a wonderful time.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good question. Obviously, everyone wants to lead a purposeful life, and I do feel that what I can do on this earth right now, given my background, is work to make the environment better, Pennsylvania's environment better. I get up in the mornings, and when I have my coffee, I think of what I can do. What I can do to work on environmental policy. There's no other legislator in Pennsylvania that prioritizes this issue the way I do. I look at how big interests just totally bully that legislature, the way the home builders came in and just enacted that terrible buffer bill, or the way the drillers came in and just really passed a weak Act 13 that deals with protection of drilling. And I see how special interests really weaken environmental protection in Pennsylvania, and how there's really so few people who will really stand up for interests when it doesn't help their own pocketbook. So I think it's really important you have people. So even, I get environment is not the most important issue to most people. I get education is more important. But you do need people who are willing to fight for that. I do feel I fulfill that role. It's what gives my life purpose and meaning, and it's what I'm going to continue to do.
Thank you. Greg, you're starting again. How would you get rid of waste and fraud in state and local government?
Well, I think you have to start from the premise, and I don't want this to be political, I don't want to get involved in a fight, but the last 4 years, you have had a Republican governor who has just made it a point to cut. You have, 2010, you have really hardcore conservative legislators have come in, and we've done nothing but cutting. I don't accept the premise that there's 10% waste and fraud. Just don't accept it. I think we always need to be vigilant. We need to fund our Auditor General and let him do his job. But to suggest with all the budget cuts we've been doing, the conservative the nature of this government, I think, 10% cut of waste and fraud is sort of it's a way to find a lot of money without raising taxes. But I don't think that money exists. Believe me, if that was there, it would have been in Governor Corbett's crosshairs and the conservative and Republicans' crosshairs long ago. So I just think you need to be vigilant, you need to be responsible. And I am aggressive, frankly, I am aggressive, and when I see these sweetheart deals, I am not afraid to get on to the House floor and point out problems. And there was recently, I don't think I have enough time, but just our last session day, I pointed out all the campaign contributions that a firm, I think it was Stevens and Lee, was getting in exchange for a deal they were getting with regard to a contract for the Department of Public Welfare. So do your best and you stay vigilant.
This is an area I have a lot of experience in. I'm a member of the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners. Waste, fraud, and abuse always exists, and it always is about 10%, unfortunately. It is important that our Auditor General has a fully funded budget to do the work that the Auditor General needs to do. There's a Democrat legislator in, I believe it's Chester County, that has a report out about just $800 million of waste, fraud, and abuse in the Department of Public Welfare alone. This is an important area because the opportunity for us to go after that money that's being abused by people who don't need it. I'm not talking about the people that need this kind of support, but the people who are abusing money that comes in from hardworking families in the 166th district. And the people that I meet that are barely making it, paying their bills and paying their property taxes in their home, is just inexcusable. And it is something that I promise I will take a look at immediately in Harrisburg.
Thank you. This is a question for you again, Sarah. Do you favor tougher gun control laws?
That's an excellent question. To frame the conversation, as I mentioned earlier, my mother was the county sheriff. My father is retired from the Marine Corps and the FBI. It will not come as a surprise to any of you then that I support our Second Amendment. Now that said, what I will tell you is that gun ownership is a right, but a tremendous responsibility. So those people who would like to exercise their right also must ensure that they have all of the proper training and safety required to keep harm from happening to others. Now, gun show loopholes, other loopholes that may exist. I think it's appropriate to take a look at those and close them wherever we can, where there could potentially be harm to others, and where potentially firearms could get in the hands of people who mean to do harm to others.
Thank you. Greg?
I do. I've always taken the gun control, mostly taken the gun control vote when the issues come before the House. Recently, it's Monday, I voted against a bill that would give the NRA standing to sue municipalities who have enacted gun control measures which are tougher than the states. Many of those jurisdictions have enacted legislation relating to lost and stolen guns. I support criminalizing the theft of report lost and stolen guns, which we can talk about. I support the ability of municipalities to enact tougher gun legislation. I support one gun a month legislation. Guns are dangerous things, and I don't think gun control laws will solve the problem, but they certainly are part of the solution.
Thank you. This is a question for Greg next. What legislation would you be introducing that is important to you?
Next term, I will be introducing legislation to increase the alternative energy portfolio standard. The amount of renewable power companies must get from renewable sources. We're developing legislation that would probably deal with fugitive methane leakage from the development of natural gas. I would also support support and be introducing legislation relating to reinstating the moratorium on state forest leasing, probably consider legislation that would restore reintroduction of House Bill 200 this term, which dealt with rebates to small businesses and homeowners who put solar panels on their roofs. I would say that, yeah, the legislation I would introduce would primarily be in the environmental area. I think a lot of work needs to be done. Hopefully we will have a governor and a legislature that would be amenable to this type of legislation.
Thank you, Greg.
A particular area of interest of mine is mental health. I've written an op-ed in the Delaware County Daily Times back in May, for those who would like to read further about what I would like to do. But mental health is something that mental illness afflicts approximately 15,000 people in our district. It's a very important issue to me. It's a very important issue to many people that I've talked to. When I talk about it at the doors with residents, I will tell you that everyone has a story. A family member, a child who is suffering in some way. And I've raised 2 children of my own, and I've seen them go through middle school and high school. And the issues that our kids are facing today in the middle school and the high school years are very difficult. And you may see mental illness take forms such as eating disorders in the middle school and high school years, more serious issues of depression and anxiety. We've unfortunately had some suicides in our community, which is absolutely devastating. So a priority for me in Harrisburg would be to work on mental health issues. And I can tell you from talking to over 10,000 residents, that's something they would like as well.
Thank you. Sarah, a question for you again. Do you believe pension reform is important? And if so, what do you propose?
Pension reform is critical. It's interesting, as I have been running for office, it doesn't poll well. And what that means is when pollsters make phone calls and they say, what is the priority to you? Pension reform is at the bottom of the list. And yet, not doing anything when it comes to pension reform threatens everything that the state needs to do well. And unfortunately, the pension issue is not just at the state level, it's also at the municipal level. But here's an important thing to know about me. Both of my parents are on government pensions. My father's on a federal pension, and my mother participates in the state pension in Pennsylvania. There is no one more dedicated than I am to making sure that those who have been made promises by the state of Pennsylvania, that they are made whole. I've seen my parents for 40 years make decisions based on the promises made to them. And I will tell you that it's very important to me that we honor those. Now, that being said, it is absolutely unsustainable if we continue to do what we have been doing. So I do support new hires coming into the system, coming in with more of a 401k type program. Now that's for new hires. The interesting thing that I can tell you I've seen happen over 30 years is that base salaries have gone up, but the pensions have not come down, or the benefits have not come down to match the private sector. Thank you.
Very, very difficult problem. I guess we're talking about public school and CSRS and PEAS, which two funds which are now $47 billion, with $1 billion underfunded. It's an incredibly serious problem. And it has its roots in under the Ridge administration, continuing through the Rendell administration when legislation was passed that really made the situation worse. Failure of the states to contribute over the years. We have in 2010 passed Act 120, which dealt to some degree with the issue of new hires. We enacted legislation which did things like increasing the vesting period, reduced the multiplier, and did other things which reduced benefits to new hires by about 20%. Is this a cure-all? The problem is still out there. It really impacts school districts. Their costs are going to continue to rise for about another 5 years, which is taking money from basic ed. As I talk to experts, and I talk and I listen, I have not heard, frankly, a good solution to this problem yet, and I've talked to some pretty smart people. Serious problem. Do I have a good solution? I think we don't.
Thank you. Greg, what can be done to help local business?
Well, I think, the business climate generally does well when the infrastructure of a community is sound. And I look at it in terms of education. I look at it in terms of infrastructure. I look at it in terms of a good environment. When you have good schools producing good kids, that helps business. When you have good roads and bridges, that helps transport goods. When you have a good environment, that is an attractive place where quality people work. That's sort of a broad question. The individual concerns of businesses, I mean, that sometimes is dealt in my district office on a case-by-case basis. I work with local business associations and try to be cooperative. But I do think that by dealing with transportation, education, and the environment, we can help the business climate of an area, of a region.
Great, thank you.
Well, I'm very proud to be endorsed by the business community, including the National Federation of Independent Businesses, and their slogan is the voice of small business, as well as CPAC that represents 4 counties in the area, and it also includes the Mainline Chamber of Commerce, as well as the Delaware County Chamber of Commerce. I'm a businesswoman myself, 23 years in business, a lot of nights sleep over meeting the payroll, and until you felt that kind of pressure, and making sure that the people that work for you are going to be paid on Friday, I tell you, you just really don't know what you should be doing to set policy about business in Pennsylvania. But when I went for the endorsement for all these different business groups, that's exactly the same question that they asked. And I will tell you, here are the things that I would like to do. Pennsylvania in general needs to be much more aggressive with tax credits. That's legislative, as well as negotiated incentives. That helps attract new business. I propose legislation to eliminate the Pennsylvania NOL carry forward. That's a technical tax thing, but it would really help with business and small business. I would review the current Keystone Opportunity Zones to determine if there are new areas in Pennsylvania that qualify. We absolutely need to take a look at our 9.99% corporate state income tax. It's almost the highest in the nation. I would also make sure that we look to increase investments in such programs as the Ben Franklin Technology Partner Fund. That's a fantastic program that Pennsylvania has. Okay, that was going to stop.
Well, the next question might give you an opportunity to continue a little longer.
Okay.
It's related to the economy, and that is how you think the state can make our local economy stronger.
Back to business. I would also encourage the state to actively market and administer programs that attract new businesses, and make sure that I work with the school districts to make sure that our current curriculum offerings are for today's job market. I'm a particular fan of vocational training. I myself took shop class back in middle school. I went to the public middle school in Radnor and made some fabulous things. But small business in our community in particular, and that's down in Ardmore, downtown Wayne, and here in Haverford. The things that I will tell you I've seen over the years, once you start seeing Wicker World and Cash for Gold move in, things are not going well, right? What we need to do is make sure that we have a diversity of different businesses in the community, that we have the type of vibrant downtown business district where people want to come in, spend their money, and spend their time. And those are the types of things that I would like to see happen. And the township itself could take a look at some sort of incentives to bring them in.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think my answer would be similar to what we stated previously about what the state could do with regard to infrastructure, education, environment. So there are various programs that the state does offer that I would be pleased to work with local officials and business owners with regard to various Main Street and Elm Street programs, which and other various grants which the state does offer to deal with revitalizing the various commercial areas of the
Okay, this is a good segue then to the next question, Mr. Vitali, and that is, please give an example of any grants or funding that you've secured for Haverford Township in the past 2 years, and then for Ms. Armstrong, would you seek specific grants or funding if you were to be elected?
Well, I think what I'm most proud of is Haverford Reserve, and I think how far that has come. The fact that that has really become something that's really enhanced the property values of this community. The rec center in particular, which I secured $1 million in state monies for. But I do think that we brought that project along from where it was threatened to be an industrial park or a golf course. We shrunk the development footprint of that and shrunk as much as politics would allow us, the residential footprint. We preserved as much open space as we could. And there's a lot of great amenities there, but I think securing that $1 million grant for the rec center in Haverford Reserve was something that I feel pretty good about.
Thank you, Ms. Armstrong.
Thank you. The job of a state legislator, among other things, is to bring back some grant money to the district. Our district is 166. We spend about $67 million a year in taxes and fees to the state. It is imperative that a legislator goes out to Harrisburg and can build the necessary relationships, gain consensus, and make sure that we can secure money for our district. We do spend an awful lot of money and send an awful lot of money to Harrisburg. There are some tremendous opportunities for us to do some great things to help revitalize our downtown business communities, to make sure that our roads are not filled with potholes, as they have been for quite some time, and make sure that the bridges are strong. And that's the type of thing that I would be interested in doing in Harrisburg.
Thank you. All right, there's 2 questions in there related, and again, as a segue here, related to obtaining additional resources from the state for local needs. One is related to our library, and as you know, that's one of our key institutions. The township has allocated $5 million, $5.5 million. More will be needed, but it's a very good start. But we will need additional funding for that. And there's also a question related to the need for additional funding for parks. And so, would you seek additional funding for those purposes? And if so, do you have any specific sources of funding that you might have in mind?
Excellent. I love the library. I love the Radnor Library. I love the Lower Merion Library. And I've had a fantastic time at the Haverford Township Library. As a matter of fact, just today, Haverford Township sent me the Read poster that I participated in with the business breakfast that they hosted recently. It's a fantastic library, and it does, however, need some improvement. And I attended the Township Commissioners meeting the night that the library decision was made. I absolutely would get in there and fight for every single possible dollar that I could bring back to this community to help with the library and the new township building and the new police station. We have significant capital projects that are going to be happening in Haverford. And I do have the skills to get in there and make sure that I'm advocating on behalf of the taxpayers here in Haverford and for the needs of Radnor and Lower Merion as well, making sure that I secure whatever grant money is possible and bringing it back home.
Thank you. Mr. Vitali.
Now, when the library knows that when the community revitalization program was in effect, they were a regular beneficiary of $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 grants for that. Whether that program is dried up, there are funding constraints in Harrisburg right now. The way the larger grants, the capital projects work is they originate with a request by the township. I've always worked with in a bipartisan way with township commissioners and township managers. When they have made a grant application for various projects, I have always been an advocate for them, and will continue to do that.
Thank you. That concludes our written questions. And so shall we proceed to the final statements? Right. And so start with Mr. Vitali, final statement. 2 minutes, is it? 3 minutes.
Well, first of all, I want to thank the league for the great job you did tonight, and thank Sarah for her courtesy and the attention of this audience and those who may listen on television. What is said tonight, in fact, is important, and I don't mean to undermine that. But what's really determinative is not so much what one says, but what one does. And I have a 22-year record, and I'll stand on that record. I think people want 3 things from the people who they choose to represent them. They want hard work, honesty, and competence. I work very hard. I have not missed a session day in 22 years in the legislature. In the past 22 years, every time the House has been in session, I've been in Harrisburg. There's not a single day I've missed. People know they've seen me, their house, in the cold winter and the heat of summer. I work very hard. I try to be honest. I think of myself as an honest person. I have never accepted money from special interest groups. I don't take gifts from PACs. And my tenure in the last 22 years has been free of scandal, so I like to think of myself as someone who has been honest. And I also think of I like to think of myself as someone who's been competent. I've had numerous recognitions from statewide groups with regard to the work I've done in the legislature. I've tried to be the type representative that I would want to represent me in government. And I think it's up, at the end of the day, it's up to the people of this district to decide whether I am the type of representative they want to continue. All I can say is I've done my best, and I ask for your support. Thank you.
Again, thank you to the League of Women Voters for organizing this evening. Thank you, Mr. Vitali. And thank you all for coming out this evening. You likely know by now that I've spent my professional career in business, and often people comment, government should be run like a business. There's certainly some truth to that statement, but I know there's one fundamental difference. In business, if you have a product line that's not profitable, you can simply decide to stop serving customers that product. Not so in government. The reality is, state government has an obligation to provide services and funding for core activities that may at times be expensive. What I bring to the table is the ability to look holistically at what we are doing, who we are serving, and how can we pay for it. While I may not yet have answers to every question out there, what I hope to leave you with tonight is that I am a quick study, a hard worker, and someone who provides thoughtful deliberation when it comes to decisions that affect the quality of life and the standard of living in our community. I've lived in this district nearly my whole life, and I'm very fully committed to making sure our neighborhoods are the best they can possibly be. In closing, I'd like to thank all of those who have been so supportive of my campaign and my family who was with me 100%. But mostly, I'd like to thank the residents of the 166th District of Pennsylvania who've been so welcoming to me. You've shared your personal stories and struggles, and you've taken time out of your busy days to invite me into your homes. You've offered me water on hot summer days and coffee last winter. I appreciate the opportunity to serve you and your families, and I hope I have earned your vote. Have a nice evening.
Thank you all for coming here tonight. tonight. Especially thank you to the Haverford Township Civic Council who helped us with the questions, and to Sarah Armstrong and Greg Vitali. I hope you'll remember to vote on November 4th. Thank you for being a great audience. Thanks a lot.